Live on DAZN Worldwide, May 2nd and 3rd, a knockout weekend of boxing. Garcia versus Romero and Canelo versus Scull. 2 huge fights. Pick one or go all in for only $90. Exclusively on DAZN. Buy now at DAZN.com.
Let's toss it over to the fourth member of our broadcast.
Both fighters use feints such as pre-slips, jab feints, foot feints, and level changes to freeze and puzzle their opposition. The feints are intended to disrupt their opponent's timing as well as bait out defensive reactions and tendencies to take advantage of later on in the fight. In Canelo's case, a fighter who constantly uses the aforementioned feints will keep him guessing between where to move his gloves, which Scull happens to do. On the other hand, Canelo also likes to set up power punches with jab, foot feints, and level changes. Eventually, he would begin feinting with the jab or foot feint to then attack with the cross or overhand while using the level change to explode into a signature shovel hook. Scull throws bow and arrow jabs, particularly to the body, as he frequently pulls his backhand away from his chin while throwing the jab, leaving him open to additional counters. He exacerbates the issue further when throwing jabs to the body, where he steps in wide, forcing him to recover balance on the lead for the transfer weight on the back foot. His lead hand often doesn't return to his face when he does so, and usually lets it drift down towards his waist. Furthermore, he takes the full step single mid-range jabs without being followed by a power punch or any defensive maneuver. Making him a sitting duck for Canelo's counter jabs and sip counters. Canelo likes to establish his offense with a hard and accurate power jab, or a step jab where the power comes from pushing off the back foot. However, Canelo doesn't typically change the speed and usually throws it at the same intensity, making it far easier to avoid and counter over time. Scull also utilizes counter jabs and slip counters to time and punish his opponents. Fighting mostly off the back foot, Scull utilizes small reverse steps when trying to control distance near the center of the ring. Once he begins getting near on the ropes, he often uses lateral movement while trying to regain real estate. With that being said, Scull stays near the ropes too frequently. Scull trades one position by the ropes for another position by the ropes without offense. Lateral movement for only the sake of resetting back into disadvantageous ring positioning. What's worse is that when he does use lateral movement, he hardly ever sets lateral traps to keep his opponent at bay, as was shown in his last fight. Unfortunately, Canelo is one of boxing's best pressure fighters who cuts off the ring while breaking down the body to slow his opponent's movement later on in the fight. With that being said, Canelo tends to crosswalk quite often when moving towards his right as he cuts off the ring. Due to this, his opponents have a much easier time escaping in that direction. Canelo uses an active high guard to react and defend against specific punches thrown. However, Scull uses feints which can offset Canelo's timing when trying to block, parry, or catch punches. Scull uses the high guard to entice his opponent to throw a jab, setting the trap and typically catching them with a counter as they take the bait. Canelo similarly uses the high guard trap with slip counters, but also block or catch and shoot counters as well. However, it's still a high guard. Due to relying on the use of defensive timing in order to work effectively, fighters are guaranteed to mistime a punch when waiting for an opening. This issue only worsens when the opponent knows how to properly use feints or probes. Your gloves can be moved out of position, leaving openings for your opponent to attack. Exceptionally fast hands can be just as problematic for a high guard practitioner. Scull's over-reliance on the high guard trap makes this all the more problematic. Canelo has a variety of counters at his disposal depending on the situation. When Scull does occasionally initiate offense, he often overreaches and becomes front foot heavy to the point where his back foot comes off the ground and lands square, exposing his center line. In this position, Scull can be susceptible to Canelo's vicious pull and step back counters, as well as the counters I mentioned earlier within the film study. Having arguably the best upper torso movement in boxing, Canelo mostly avoids his opponent's offense through the use of great upper torso movement. Along with subtle evasive footwork, he utilizes slipping, pulling, ducking, or rolling to avoid punches. However, this isn't something he can sustain for a great period of time as the fights get into the later rounds. His counterpunching also severely diminishes when he focuses solely on avoiding punches with upper body movement. Head movement also relies on how reactive the user can be, which can be disrupted through the use of feints. Scull also tends to use more upper torso movement when his legs start to slow down and falls victim to the same issues. Canelo possesses a good control game in the pocket. He effectively uses frames, post, and head control to momentarily stifle opponents' punching and also create space to establish offense. When he's in the pocket, he puts together explosive combinations while attacking the body. However, when Canelo isn't using controls, he can at times let his hands go with combinations while in equal positioning, essentially making his offense his defense. In the pocket, Scull is incredibly limited, possessing little to no inside game in general. To make up for this, he often initiates clinches or complains to the ref to break the clinch and force a reset. However, Canelo also possesses the physicality and skill to make clinching very difficult. It's at this range near the ropes where I believe the fight will be most one-sided in Canelo's favor. Although this is an undisputed fight, Canelo seems to be the clear favorite to win. While they do share a few of the same issues, Canelo makes up for them by possessing skill in other departments where Scull does not. Canelo possesses an arsenal of counterpunching at mid-range where Scull is consistent, albeit very minimal. His lack of counterpunching becomes more problematic on the ropes and makes his tendency to constantly position himself there against a pressure fighter who is effective at cutting off the ring all the more troublesome. Even if Scull were to deliberately move more to Canelo's right when on the ropes and force Canelo's tendency to crosswalk become apparent, he doesn't consistently attack enough from that position. It's a stylistic nightmare, not to mention a mismatch. Problems only go from bad to worse for Scull if or when this fight takes place in the pocket. I don't see a clear path to victory with all his limitations. The most I could see is a puncher's chance, which would be pretty low considering Canelo's known durability, as well as Scull possessing a knockout ratio under 40% and hasn't stopped anyone in almost 4 years. Let me know who you got in the comment section below. Peace.